Zambia is facing a potential crisis of plastic pollution due to the amount of plastic waste being generated. This is despite the country having instituted statutory instrument number 65 of 2018. The SI seeks to enforce the principle of extended producer responsibility by restricting, among other things, production of plastics below 30 microns in thickness. Today on News in Depth, McPherson Nkuka looks at plastic pollution and its effect on the environment. I'm your host, Masauso Mukwayaya. Stay tuned.
Littered on the ground, most likely thrown out of car windows indiscriminately. These plastics have piled up over time and have remained unattended to. The plastic sometimes comes from different places and collects into one site, carried by a gust of wind. Landscapes littered with different types of plastic packaging have become a common source of pollution in many parts of Zambia. Many of these plastics are lightweight, single-use products and packaging materials, which are not deposited in designated trash containers for subsequent removal to landfills or recycling centers. What compounds this filthy situation is that some people have adopted an unpleasant tendency of throwing trash near or around designated dump sites. This may be because most single-use plastics become an inconvenience and useless to people once the contents are consumed. Unfortunately, the negative effect of plastics on the environment lasts for hundreds of years. Plastic pollution has become one of the most pressing environmental issues in Zambia. The problem is most visible in Lusaka, the capital city, due to inefficient garbage collection system.
Plastic is causing pollution within our environment, and this is because most of this plastic does not biodegrade, and secondly, it's because this plastic actually ends up in our waterways and pollutes our waterways.
This untreated wastewater flushed from houses in Lusaka runs from a sewer network into the Lusaka Water and Sanitation Company treatment plant at Machinchi in Garden Township. By design, only wastewater and other biodegradable materials, such as tissue, are meant to run through the network. But this is not the case. The screening station at Machinchi reveals the different particles that are dumped in the network, and the prominent material among the waste is plastic.
It has affected the treatment process. It affects the quality of the waste that you are supposed to be discharging to the environment, because plastics tend to pollute the system and also affect the effluent that you are discharging in the environment.
According to research, the average consumer comes into daily contact with all kinds of plastic materials that have been developed specifically to defeat natural decay processes. These are materials derived mainly from petroleum that can be molded, cast, spun, or applied as a coating. And since synthetic plastics are largely non-biodegradable, they tend to persist in natural environments.
The other issue with plastic is actually that some chemicals in plastics are actually dangerous to our environment. So sometimes plastic will be emitting chemicals that actually will cause environmental degradation and also will cause defects or effects on human health. As people are burning waste and their plastic in that particular waste, you'll find that there's air pollution, and most of the time that air pollution will consist of chemicals that are harmful to our health, and these particular chemicals are actually persistent in the environment.
Plastic pollution has a direct and deadly effect on wildlife. Plastics have been found to have blocked digestive tracts or pierced organs, causing starvation and, in extreme cases, death.
This is a material that is indigestible. So when the animals eat it, basically it causes different, problems to the animals. Number one, it will cause, an artificial filling of the stomachs, leading to animals, eating less food than they require, and eventually, depending on how much plastic they have taken, they might just end of starvation because they ate that plastic bag. Number two, it can actually cause blockage of, like the GIT, part of the GIT, the gastrointestinal tract, the intestines there, and that can actually cause, what you call impaction, leading to, again, a very painful, very bad death of the wildlife.
Plastics have also been found to have formed snares in the protected areas, leading to wild animals getting trapped and injured.
We have cases where, maybe an animal was trying to get, because of the smell, it goes into a container, and that animal becomes very vulnerable because then it can easily be bashed by a vehicle. It can, be easy prey, such effects. So plastics basically should be avoided, especially in the natural space, in the natural habitat. It's better that we encourage much more the usage of biodegradable material, and also just bags that you don't use, those one-time disposable bags. It's better we get bags that people can use, regularly and continuously.
While plastic has proved to be a danger on the environment, its presence is creating employment for some people. Masuzio Piri, 36, is a plastic waste picker. He has lived most of his youthful life collecting high-definition plastic products. This was after his footballing career was cut short after he suffered an injury. What made me start collecting plastic bottles was because I lost a job that I was doing some time back. My career in football was also cut short due to an injury. So as I was waiting, I decided to venture into collecting plastics, and I would keep them home, then later sell to some Chinese firm in the industrial area. Masuzio's errands start as early as 05 and walks kilometers to look for plastic products of his choice. He feels his work is contributing to keeping Lusaka clean, apart from making money through sales of the products. The good I've found in collecting plastic is that I take part in cleaning the environment. Getting rid of plastics will mean leaving me without a job, because as things are, this is my only source of income. If they decide to get rid of plastics, they should find employment for us so that our lives are sustained. Going by Masuzio's passion to pick plastic for business, it is clear that Lusaka is now surrounded by plastic. The problem is growing into a crisis as production of disposable plastic products is rapidly increasing and overwhelming the country's ability to deal with them.
We need an alternative. 20, 30 years ago, there was not much of this plastic pollution. There wasn't this famous at Canine, that plastic they pack tomatoes and stuff. They used to wrap in paper, in newspapers and different and old books and stuff like that. But now we've gotten accustomed to plastic. Okay, so now we need to wean off our people from this addiction of plastic. And if we don't do that, people are comfortable in doing it at the end of the day. So we need alternatives as a people. We can't fail to think outside plastic.
Due to the increasing concerns on plastic waste in Zambia, government was prompted to institute a statutory instrument in 2018. The statutory instrument, being enforced by Zambia Environmental Management Agency, ZEMA, was signed to help enforce, among other things, ban the production of plastic below 30 microns.
I would say it's not adequately done. And of course, we might talk of awareness. Companies that are involved in that and people that are utilizing various types of packaging plastic materials are also aware. But I think there's more that needs to be done. The enforcement is, would say, we've not reached the level where we haven't yet had people that are being taken to the courts of law so that they are answerable towards this kind of a challenge.
We have 13 other products that we're looking at, like near end of life, electrical and electrical equipment. We also have used oil, we have used tires and all those things. So when you look at SI number 65 already, when it comes to e-waste, we are actually trying to put in place a statutory instrument that will help us actually regulate e-waste. And then we look at used oil, and then we also have empty pesticides containers. So we have a whole range of products that have been listed under SI number 65. The only issue is that plastic is on top, in that plastic has been the most prominent kind of waste that we are seeing in our environment. But let's not forget that even the other 13 products that are listed under SI number 65 are also causing pollution.
The introduction of that SI, has actually been helpful, although I would say it hasn't been enforced, fully. I think Zambia, for many years, we have used plastics and plastic bags for the carriage of, whenever we go shopping, and even as we buy these takeaway food and all that kind of a thing. But I think on the enforcement aspect, it's about time, the country as a whole, helped one another. We need people that will be, conservation minded, so that, together we can enforce. Because I feel when we just leave the enforcement to maybe the police, that will not help. So it has to be a lot more to do with sensitizing the citizenry, of this country. Everybody has to play a role so that the message goes across, and we deliberately start avoiding plastics.
The SI, which further seeks to enforce the principle of extended producer responsibility, makes the manufacturers of some items responsible for creating infrastructure to take back and recycle the products they produce. But there is a problem.
That we need to have a proper value chain system that should be able to easily track the producer. Of course, you can track them using the addresses and everything else, but you must have a system in place. And I understand, though I'm not very sure, there's some amount which they pay, which goes towards that that activity. So they are the ones that are responsible, and they must be able to make sure that they are able to manage whatever that is being generated. So I think the regulatory bodies that are mandated to ensure that that particular regulation is implemented they have to involve the manufacturing industries per se, and also other stakeholders, and see how they can actualize the polluter pay responsibility principle.
As long as they can produce, distribute and sell with impunity, then we're not going to go anywhere, and we're not going to have a clean and sustainable environment. We need a law or an SI that is going to compel plastic producers to be responsible for their products' life cycle. As the term even itself is self-explanatory, extended producer responsibility. That's simply extending the producer's responsibility from production through to disposal, not just production and letting it to the local authority and the general public to take care of their waste.
Given the scale of plastic pollution, the cost of removing plastics from the environment is becoming prohibitive. The Lusaka Water and Sanitation Company is facing serious cost implications to deal with plastic deposited in their network.
We have someone on the screen all the time, screening, ensuring that we remove the plastics before we continue with the treatment process. So it's a cost on our part, and we think that that is the direction that the country should take in order to protect the environment, but also on our part to reduce the cost of the treatment that we incur because of the solid waste which we have to take care of.
But for Masuzio, banning production of plastic products will be detrimental, as his livelihood depends on it. I wouldn't say plastic is a problem because I get money from collecting it. Sometimes while searching for plastic bottles, I get some pieceworks, so I can't say plastics have brought problems. The convenience plastics offer, however, leads to a throwaway culture that reveals the material's dark side. Globally, single-use plastics account for 40% of the plastic produced every year. Accumulation in the environment of these synthetic plastic products is to the point that they create problems for wildlife and their habitats as well as for human populations. Therefore, there is need to monitor human activities as they are the main contributors of plastic pollution.
We have, laws in place, to guide people that are using those roads to, number one, if there's any litter in those buses, we have bins, by the entrance. So it's important they clear their buses. The police were also enforcing that, they would have checkpoints, maybe before the park and generally everywhere where they would check if buses, have got bins and all that kind of a thing. We just have to strengthen those regulations so that that can be avoided. And also tourists, it matters where people come from. Others are used to, just littering around like that. But it's about time that we sensitize the tourists. As they go into these protected areas, we tell them about the detrimental aspect of them littering anyhow, so that, that is avoided.
Most solutions to the problem of plastic pollution focus on preventing improper disposal or even limiting the use of certain plastic items. Despite these solutions, the public seems to have challenges to adapt to trends as minds are affixed to using plastic.
People need to realize that there are alternatives. We can use bags, other bags that are friendly to the environment to carry our goods, and also that we can do away with the plastics. I know it's an issue of also trying to force people to do that when you see that people are not doing it. We also have a lot of illegal plastic manufacturing that happen in some parts of the country, and most of the time you see that plastic below 30 microns is being manufactured secretly in some places, and sometimes they'll actually even manufacture it in the night, knowing that there are no law enforcers in the night who can see them, and these places are hidden. Come during the day, you go there, they're actually almost non-existent.
This extends to the Lusaka Water and Sanitation Company. For the local utility, plastic pollution in its network will only be fought if there is a change in behavior by consumers of the sanitation services the company provides.
We have been holding road shows in a number of communities in Kaunda Square, in Mtendere. We've done that in Lilanda, Matero, as well as in Kanyama, just to create that awareness that people should desist from dumping solid waste into the network, because it compromises service delivery to the entire community. But obviously it calls for concerted effort because the problem that we have is not that of managing the sewer network. The problem which we have in the city of Lusaka is a problem of solid waste.
Awareness of the serious consequences of plastic pollution and new solutions are needed. Some of the suggestions include promoting the use of biodegradable products and a zero-waste philosophy, which should be embraced by all consumers. However, there are several impeding factors.
We find solutions, better solutions of sorting out plastic, and not just depending on recycling, because recycling is not going to work. Recycling hasn't worked. We've recycled less than 9% of plastic ever produced on Earth. The rest is in landfills and in the rivers and oceans. So the best way we can go and sort out plastic production is reducing the production itself.
Meanwhile, the Zambia Environmental Management Agency, ZEMA, underscores the importance of individual efforts in fostering a plastic-free environment.
Our biggest challenge has been people actually thinking issues of pollution, issues of plastic pollution belong to Zambia Environmental Management Agency and not to them. But then when you look at the effects of pollution, it's affecting us. The cancers we're seeing around, the diseases we're seeing around that are emanating from pollution are actually affecting us as individuals. So it's very important that we need to realize that plastic pollution is real and it's affecting our environment. And when we look at sustainability of the environment, we need to actually come on board and make sure that we don't participate in polluting the environment by saying no to plastic.
Fines for littering have proved difficult to enforce, but various fees or outright bans on foamed food containers and plastic shopping bags are now common, as are deposits redeemed by taking beverage bottles to recycling centers. Talking of individual brilliance, Masuzio fits in well, but with challenges. The aggregators in townships usually exploit us, and it is difficult to work around such to make some good cash. For example, this black plastic would sell at 15 kwacha in the township, but I usually pack everything in this kind of a bag and sell to the Chinese at a higher cost of about 350 to 400 kwacha. I move a lot in order for me to find the bottles. The limitation in enforcing SI number 65 is believed to be as a result of lack of working synergies among stakeholders. The Zambia Institute of Environmental Health is of the view that working together will produce desired outcomes in dealing with plastic waste.
We have our members in various institutions, the local authority, the Ministry of Health, ZEMA, even in the international community. So what needs to be done now is to strengthen we strategize the approaches so that we start working together, having one language, looking at all these matters in a very holistic approach. We shouldn't work in silo. We need to work together.
Single-use plastic should be totally banned in this country, and these plastic packaging like bottles for water and drinks, there must be a buyback policy. The producers must be responsible for their products. They must be able to buy back that out of our environment.
It is estimated that more than 40% of plastics are used only once before being disposed of. Fortunately, there are things such as recycling that people can do to manage the situation. Such actions will help put an end to plastic pollution, and the time to act is now.
This is where we come to the end of this week's edition of News in Depth, where we were looking at plastic pollution and its effects on the environment. Join us next week for yet another interesting documentary. I've been your host, Masauso Mukwayaya. Thank you so much for the privilege of your time. Pleasant viewing.